every organization that is in the software space is going to be building and shipping new software. That realization that like we wanted to be a product that teams were using and relying on a daily basis. Capability of it is to be able to run A/B tests, so you could still serve that original audience. You had a much stickier product in theory, and product that sort of had a higher value component to it. So ask the question of sort of like, are we solving the highest order function that your audience is actually seeing? Ask the question of what are other ways that buyers are choosing to go in this space? And we were seeing more and more choose not to buy an A/B testing standalone product, but that we're looking to buy a feature flagging platform instead.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Rob Ocel, VP of Innovation at This.Labs, here for another episode of the Leadership Exchange. Today, I'm here with Andrew Norris. Andrew is the co-founder and CEO at DevCycle. Andrew, how are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Rob. Very
thanks
much
for being here.
looking forward to sharing a little bit about what we're up to.
Yeah, it's a really cool conversation we're going to be having, and I think we'll dive deeply into it. But to set the stage, I mentioned that you're the co-founder and CEO at DevCycle, but I think DevCycle as a company has an interesting origin story. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you got involved in DevCycle and how DevCycle came to be in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. So as a group of founders who've been working together over 10 years now, our first product that we brought to market actually out of Y Combinator back in 2014 was called Taplytics. At the time, what we wanted to be able to help companies with as sort of mobile app developers ourselves was sort of helping them understand how the changes that they were making to their products were having an impact on growth, on the customer experience, the sort of overall value that it was creating. And at the time, A/B testing was taking off sort of as a tool in teams' tool belts to do that. So we, as mobile app developers, created the first fully visual and code-based method to be able to A/B test in mobile apps, and released that way back in 2014. Really, at the time that the growth and adoption of mobile apps was taking off, and that sort of put us on that sort of growth trajectory that you typically see at early stage companies.
I love that idea. 2014. I mean, for any web developers that happen to be listening, this is before the era of React.
Yes, this is pre-React. React was 2017, 2018 it started
I think where it really
to
took
come
off.
in.
I think it was maybe around 2015, 2016 timeframe, but it wasn't really huge until 17, 18, something like that. Yeah.
But this was fully native back in the day. The only way to build a mobile app was fully native. And so we got to know the ins and outs of iOS and Android really, really well. And that sort of market position where was doing really well for us. We grew as Taplytics really from a point of uh, following the trend lines and adoption of organizations releasing mobile apps and investing more and more in that as a primary interface for everything from media consumption to sales to things like personal banking or other services. And we worked with some great companies like Target and Tinder, the RBC bank here in Canada that we still work with today. Really around figuring out, how organizations are going to use mobile as a differentiated channel. And over the course of the following years, what we started to see was sort of two trends emerge. One was that more and more organizations weren't looking at mobile as a separate business channel for them. They looked at it as part of more of a horizontal play. It's trying to keep as both similar and accessible an interface as you would have on the web or other interfaces. So less and less there was a dedicated mobile team, and more mobile engineers and mobile product folks are being embedded within more horizontal product lines. So that put us sort of on a trajectory to grow beyond mobile and start competing in the web space, even the back end space, and even things like push notifications over the years. And what we found over that sort of expansion and journey was a couple things. One, that uh, we were seeing a lot of organizations really struggle with the capability of non-technical people being able to keep all of these different languages and platforms um, aligned and have experiments and A/B tests, which for those that don't know, A/B test is just a simple science experiment within your product. So trying a couple different changes, either in code or different imagery or text in the code, and comparing in an analytical way which one is outperforming the other. We're seeing more and more non-technical people struggle with that. And we were also seeing sort of a ballooning of our own product, which became super manageable beyond just like
Mm.
supporting mobile. We were having to support basically every web framework out there, every backend language, even messaging and communication channels that weren't even platforms themselves, but sort of fit into that journey and that customer journey that companies were trying to create from a like omnichannel perspective.
Okay. It's interesting though, is like, you talked about this a bit, but Taplytics was a pretty successful company prior to making the pivot. I mean, several millions of dollars in annual revenue and things like that. And how you gave some of the ideas, but there are companies out there who don't love their tech stack. It grew in fits and starts in different ways and became something that's a little hard to manage, but is working for their business cases. You described, maybe not a perfect fit, or at least the market was shifting in a different direction. I think a lot of people find themselves there, but you had a relatively successful company. So, what
Yeah.
were the signals that started to indicate to you that there was another opportunity out there? Like, what were some of the first things that you were picking up on that maybe kind of moved your antennae?
Yeah, what it after 2020, we were sort of took it was a obviously a moment for reflection for a lot of businesses. And after being in market for 6, 7 years at that point, growing to, over 5 million in revenue, and, having by all external accounts, a successful brand, a successful product, we started to dig into the data because we were starting to see growth slow down. Um,
Mm, mm, mm.
and the first thing we saw was actually within our existing customer base, a change in who was actually using the product on a day-to-day basis. It no longer was non-technical members of the team, so like product managers, marketers, data analytics folks who were in there running experiments, started to become more and more developers, engineering teams that were the ones taking ownership and responsibility for this. And we were seeing in markets sort of an overall shift away from teams being interested in what our initial value prop, so what we were known as is sort of the no code, the visual editing option for teams that wanted to do feature flagging. It was shifting to no, like code was the way that teams wanted to be able to do this. And for a couple of reasons. One, engineers don't trust when other people get into the weeds
Right.
of how a product looks and functions. As well as I
It's
would
like a
say
one
the
size fits all shirt, right? Like nobody
yeah,
really believes that it's true.
yeah, it was a great way for us to can like is a great attraction for companies that were interested in doing this of like, wow, we can do this and we don't have to use up as many internal engineering resources as um, use up as many engineering resources as we would otherwise. And the dream was sort of better than the reality in practice because the complexity of web languages was increasing where they became more um, distributed applications instead of sort of standalone static pages. The black box nature of iOS and Android, especially sort of with the shift to, I think it was iOS 12 and Android X when that came out, closed a lot of the doors that we previously had access to be able to impact what the built interface actually looks like at the end of the day. And so the capabilities actually were reducing as time went on instead of increasing.
Mm, 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 mm,
Um, and the companies that were having the most success with their experimentation program were the ones who really had an engineering team driving it at the end of the day. And increasingly, we were seeing the first step in that process was instead of running an experiment sort of on a new feature, they were using feature flags or remote config controls as a starting point for those experiments. The
mm,
first step was how do you build it and release it in a way that's safe? And then they would turn it into an experiment later on,
mhm,
which gave us the signal that there potentially is a different market there. So as we talked to our customers and we were talked to other teams that were looking to buy into the space, we were seen very much as a martech product, as a marketing technology product, and really like not that we didn't have a good reputation with the engineers, but it wasn't seen as a as an engineering dev tool. And feature flagging very much had established itself as in the dev tool space, where the primary end user was the day-to-day developer who is shipping releases to existing features and creating new features, sort of in that workflow release process that developers use on a day-to-day basis.
mm.
And that's sort of what inspired us to say, I think there's a separate market here from what we'd previously gone after.
So okay, so that's the data. Like what was the action plan off the beginning, right? Because I can imagine like if you're sitting there and you're realizing this is in the data, that your audience is shifting, their needs are shifting. Um, I guess there must be a natural conversation that is like, well, what can our product do to meet those needs? Can we shift the existing product? Can we add a few features or maybe de-emphasize other features to like meet this need? Or do we have to build something entirely different? Like did you have an initial idea of what you were trying to do, or was it just some experimentation that evolved over time? Like what were those initial kind of ideas, actions that you took?
Yeah, and I think this is important for a lot of entrepreneurs and technology leaders to do this every once in a while. When you're faced with a shift like this, sort of put down all the options on the table. Very clearly, like the fastest and most in the flow way we could have done this is just add additional capabilities to the existing platform to deepen our capability of running feature flags. And that wouldn't have required really anything other than, a new product roadmap shift that we would have done. Option two, which we considered as well, was actually, okay, we've spent all this time and energy building out this infrastructure. We know how it scales. We sort of know the in and outs of it. What if we just white labeled uh, DevCycle as sort of a separate uh, interface and separate brand that's more targeted for developers rather than the Taplytics, which was seen more as a marketing product, which would have been a bit of design work and a bit of branding work and that type of thing. Um, and then option three was, you know, what if how difficult would it be to start with a blank sheet of paper and design really take all of our learnings from at that point 7 years of building highly scalable
Mm,
SaaS products that have to both be instantly responsive and at the scale of hundreds of millions of end users hitting it on a daily basis. How do we take our learnings there and build the platform that we think could scale for the next 10, 15 years? And that was a difficult decision that we had to go through and consider all the options. um, we were in a unique kind of position because typically when you do a shift like this, your initial instinct is let's create a separate company, a separate product brand that is disconnected from the first, and you'll have half the team go off and maintain the existing product, and the other half of the team work on the new thing. We took a very different approach where uh, we wanted to go all in on building something new because what we felt was the both the profit margin because of high hosting costs of the amount of data flow
mm,
and the way that system had been architected, you know, was never going to get 90 plus percent from a profit margin perspective. It was always sort of 75 to 80%, as well as the performance. You had to throw more and more expensive and more high powered servers at the system to be able to hit the performance levels that companies were expecting. When we started, if you could get a response to an end user's mobile app or website within 100 milliseconds or 150 milliseconds as sort of our initial benchmark, that was great. That was fine, but the expectation had shifted, and it's like, how do you get under 50 milliseconds? Um, and that required a complete re-architecture of how we were doing things. So what we saw was like we thought that the longer, more likely product to work out was going to be DevCycle and this feature flagging direction.
Hmm.
And so we took all of our engineers outside of sort of a emergency response group that would jump in on Taplytics customer problems. We took all of our engineers and put them in a sprint for about 3.5 months
Wow.
to build something new. So it was a really fun exercise for the team of like, what if we were to take all of our learnings and make like core design principle decisions, like this was a brand new startup, but doing with the resources a company that had dozens of engineers and the resources of a business that was growing.
All right, well, we have more of our episode, but first, we just like to take a moment to thank today's sponsor. This episode is brought to you by This Labs, the experts in modern web development and consulting. If you're looking to scale up your development teams efficiently, or you need assistance in turning your innovative ideas into reality with robust proofs of concept, This Labs has you covered. Here at This Labs, we don't just build software, we build partnerships. They collaborate closely with your team to understand your unique challenges and craft tailored solutions that drive real results. Join the many companies that have accelerated their growth and innovation with the help of This Labs. Visit this.co to discover how they can help you take your projects to the next level. Thank you to this.labs and my team for sponsoring this episode and allowing me to have these kind of fun conversations. All right, back to our episode. So, Andrew, just before you're talking about the decision to, you know, kind of go not all in, but like to really redirect everything that isn't nailed down
Yeah,
towards this
exactly.
new initiative. But for a period of maybe several months, 3.5, 4 months, whatever it was, talk to me a little bit about the resolve of the team. I mean, I'm sure as developers, I get it, right? I've been working on maintaining this product maybe for many years. The idea of working on something brand new from the ground up, I'm sure excitement out of the gates holds on to everything. But at some point, people must start to wonder if the new thing is going to materialize. Did you experience any of that? And like, what do you need from a leadership perspective to kind of make sure that the team doesn't lose their resolve until the new data is in?
From an engineering team perspective, the ones building it and the product team sort of setting up the process, it was very self-motivating because one, this was a problem that they saw that we weren't able to address with our existing product. This was a platform that, if we got things right, would not just be the platform we use, but the platform the industry would use to build and release software for the next 10 years. So very sort of motivational that way. Um, but on the other hand, we had an existing product that was still in market and customers that were still there. Um, and we purposely structured the build process to not have a old team and new team. Um, a lot of friction, a lot of dissatisfaction can come out of that. So we almost had like an on-call rotation for the existing product that folks would cycle through. If there were things that came up on Taplytics while we are building DevCycle, they would go through and do. But it was from a go to market that you're sort of building it and hoping that the customers come. You have a observation of the market shifting, what your customers are saying, and a belief that the core problem we were actually trying to solve wasn't A/B testing, but it was how do you build and release software in a faster, more efficient way. And feature flags was sort of the top order problem that we should be going after. But that was a bet. And we made the choice, and probably in retrospect, we may have made a different choice, but we made the choice to basically treat it as an experiment. So you would have
Mm.
both products in market, one Taplytics A/B testing designed for your non-technical members of the team, and you have DevCycle, the feature flagging first platform, really designed for your engineers and your release team. Um, and that was a risk. We thought there would be some value where you'd be able to cross sell between the two, and you have your engineers use DevCycle, and then for the use cases that didn't make sense for a developer to run with, you would be able to sell Taplytics. Um, and so we were very upfront that we were going to try this as an experiment. We are going to track the data on a weekly basis. Um, but luckily for us, and the other thing is we didn't have this be DevCycle by Taplytics, or really
Oh yeah, yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
external party would have no idea that the two companies or products would be interlinked or the same one, which was another bet that we made to say, like, let's not, there's going to be some baggage that we carry over, but let's let us control when and how we bring our existing audience on that journey. And so it was like a brand new product that launched at a very, with the size of engineering team that we had and the experience that we had, we came out of the gate in a fairly polished state. Like the MVP was fully functional. The design approach that we took to how to manage flags in a different way than we had done before with our product, or how other platforms like LaunchDarkly or Split.io had structured their platforms. And we had a very opinionated view of that we thought was very developer friendly and sort of reflected the build and epic uh, mindset and process that most teams were using to build software. Um, and so really it grew very organically, very quickly. Within 6 months, we were seeing very strong sort of inbound traffic. In fact, more volume of inbound traffic than Taplytics was seeing. We'd been invited to several enterprise level RFP applications, and won a couple of those. And we had very strong sort of signals off the bat that this was the direction we should head in. And you sort of knew the sort of like aha moment for us that, like, I think we need to make a choice of what direction we're going to go in, was when you were having existing Taplytics customers reach out to DevCycle to see if we could or to purchase it. And you're like, okay, well, I think we found a good positioning there. And so um, that was a that was a big decision point, and I think the team along the way were sort of very engaged. We're very transparent with what we were seeing from a growth perspective, but we were effectively migrating not just the engineering tech, but the whole company on this journey over to new product line, and and there were a lot of changes we had to make along the way to make that effective.
Yeah, I'm curious as you reflect on this and you maybe think about where you would take these lessons with you to another company, how you would answer people and talk to other leaders who deal with the types of things that I've encountered, which is that, you all sat there and you seemed like you were realizing that there were your users were shifting. I think another version of somebody looking at this maybe would have come to the conclusion that our product is not meeting the needs of our original users. We should adapt the product to go back and recover our original users rather than attempt to capture these new users. And with any company, I mean, if you were saying that the growth was kind of flagging a little bit, it might be perceived that there is limited investment to try a few different experiments. So why invest the experiment in something new versus an experiment in some set of features on the existing thing? And I think this is a tension that so many teams have. So I'm curious, like, what the wisdom is you now have that you would say to your new leadership team at another company or to ones that exist, as far as how to you know how to get over, I guess, some of that risk aversion or fear of taking a bold step versus not giving up on something too early, right? Like, it can happen even in that scenario.
Yeah, you have that natural pushback on sort of that sunk cost fallacy of you know we built so much, and brand equity, but I think in our scenario, the and the sort of learning that I would take for future companies, or for others out there, is really ask the question of what's the core problem that you're solving
Mhm.
and what's the sort of highest order function problem in that category. So for us, A/B testing was appearing to act more as a functionality, less so a sort of separate product line. Is sort of that
Mm.
typical, is it a, you know, is this a separate business or is this a feature of something else? And I think where we got to was the the fact that, you know, teams weren't using our product on a daily basis. You would have to do massive internal cultural shifts at a client's company to be able to get them to do experiments as part of everyday development, everyday releasing of new functionality. And some had made the investments in personnel, in, you know, organizational support to be able to do that, but 90% were not or were never going to. But every organization that is in the software space is going to be building and shipping new software. And that realization that like we wanted to be a product that teams were using and relying on a daily basis, a capability of it is to be able to run A/B tests. So you could still serve that original audience, but you had a much stickier product in theory, and a product that sort of had a higher value component to it. So um, ask the question of sort of like, are we solving the highest order function that your audience is actually seeing? Ask the question of, you know, what are other ways that uh, buyers are choosing to go in this space? And we were seeing more and more choose not to buy an A/B testing standalone product, but that we're looking to buy
Yeah.
a feature flagging platform instead. Um, and those were all good signals to us that, you know, it made sense to do a shift. And then although it's, you know, it's a risk, it's a bumpy process, and there's lots of challenges when you migrate customers, when you recreate a brand from this ground up. But, you know, at the end of the day, it can put you on a different growth trajectory, and that's sort of what we were looking for. You know, we wanted to be able to get to the next step as an organization, and the way to do that was kind of like take a step back to take steps forward.
I like that idea too. That of looking at things in that sort of morph mindset. I've seen this come up a lot in product conversations I've had recently, where it's like, well, why are you so excited about this product when this product is so similar? And I find myself sometimes saying, because I can build that product in this product.
Yeah.
Like, especially in the dev space, right? It's like this one is a more general application. I can actually do both sets of things. I can do this feature and this feature with one technology. And while there is value in specialization, users do need that at times. I think that is also a powerful mindset, is to think like, hey, if you're considering A/B testing or feature flagging, can use feature flagging to build A/B testing. So maybe there's a lot of potency in this idea that if we're in this space, maybe the potential for growth is even larger than if we stayed in this space. I don't think enough people are thinking about that sometimes.
Yeah, and you know, the it really came out of also like an understanding of like, is there a better way for people, for our users to be able to create uh, A/B tests? And for us, you know, we were able to answer the question, yes, because we were seeing evidence of it by teams that had, instead of starting with an A/B test or starting with a feature flag and putting all the work and controls and variables in place uh, just to get the software out the door and launch it in a safe manner, and then being able to convert that later on to an A/B test. Well, we thought, what if we combine these two efforts and design a platform from the ground up where you start with a feature flag, release it, and an A/B test effectively becomes a deployment state, and you can convert one into the other and back and forth very easily. So we were not just solving for a new problem, but we were solving a better way to achieve the biggest hurdle that we were seeing our customers face with our existing product line by lowering the barrier to entry for teams to be able to do more and deeper types of experimentation as well.
Well, I suppose in conclusion, I mean, congratulations. I mean, it does sound like this pivot was very successful. It seems like you all made a bet that seems to have paid off, which is, got to feel good as a founder and a CEO,
Yeah.
to realize that, you correctly identified what maybe was the opportunity that was sitting in front of you. So,
Yeah,
um,
it very much was a team effort of, it was engaging every engineer, every product manager, every account manager on our team, along with our leadership, to be able to have strong conviction about going in this direction. It wouldn't have been possible if everyone wasn't bought into that level. And we're now growing at a much faster rate than we were before. And there's some changes that we're seeing in the ecosystem that we're much better able to react to and get ahead of with this new platform in DevCycle, and excited to be helping an even broader range of development teams and companies out there.
Wonderful. Well, as we close out, if anybody's interested in connecting with you online or hearing more about the story of how DevCycle came to be, can you let people know where they can find you?
For sure. So devcycle.com. We also have a lot of content on our YouTube page. We do fairly often weekly streams as well to help teams learn from the experience we've had from how do you ship to production faster and sort of uh, lower the risk and the internal friction that can come from do we really need to ship on a continuous basis? Well, we're strong believers in that, and there's a lot of content on our blog and website that can help provide some examples of how teams can do that.
Wonderful. All right. Well, that's going to be it for us today. Thank you to Andrew for being our guest, and thanks to each of you for listening. Hope to see you all next time. As we close out, we would just like to thank today's sponsor, This.Labs, one last time, who would like me to remind you that, hey, sometimes it's hard to bridge the gap between business objectives and tech implementation, and it can get messy. This dot is trusted by top names like Meta, Google, and T-Mobile, and they love helping business leaders fulfill their strategic digital initiatives. Check them out at this.co. One more time, that's